Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KMED this weekend. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the real estate guys, with you. We're both real estate brokers with John L. Scott in Southern Oregon, and we get together with you once a week here on KMED to talk about, well, all sorts of real estate-related activities and issues. We never run out of topics. We've been doing this since 2009, and we thank you for joining us right here on AM 1440. Well, I'm telling you, Joe, we've got just a wild time ahead. You know, the real estate market, whether you buy, it's different, you know, for everybody. Whether you buy, sell, invest, or rent, the real estate market right now is different in all four of those categories. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. The market's been on the move, and particularly tight for renters. We see a lot of inter-office memos. We're looking for help for our clients to get into rental properties and to find places to land for a while. That's
probably the biggest issue right now is rental properties and, of course, multifamily units. And we see all the issues that are out there. It's nice to see the Mail Tribune had a big story recently on that issue because it certainly is acute and it's not going to go away until somebody addresses it. And really the only place it's going to do it is going to be from our governments to lead the way. So we'll hope that happens. Well, today here on the show, we're pretty excited because the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy has been around for a long time. It's not like, they're new. Land Conservancies, Joe, and we were back in news days, back in TV news days, we did stories on the Land Conservancy movement that in the 70s and the 80s, actually. So we go back a long time with them. Well, Craig Harper is a project manager for the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy, is here with us in the studio. Craig, nice to have you here. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Pete. Good to be here.
Tell me about the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy. It's been around a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been here in Southern Oregon since 1978.
78?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've got almost 10,000 acres under conservation now, mainly in Jackson-Josephine County, but throughout the Rogue Basin and in neighboring counties, Curry, Douglas, and Klamath County.
And when you say 10,000 acres, what does that mean, conserve? What does that mean of these acres?
Well, we have different ways of conservation, conserving land, but the main tool we use is called the conservation easement, which is a legal agreement between private landowners and a land trust or the Land Conservancy. And that's basically, is a way to restrict activities and also to allow, keep land in a more natural state or keep working lands working.
And we're going to hear more about the conservation easements because those are something that I think a lot of rural landowners may not know about and may find an important part of their tools. And Eric Poole, who is a board member of the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy, is also here in the studio at KMED. And Eric is also a real estate broker with Full Circle, and you're on the board of this thing. So how did you get, I'm always curious as to how brokers get involved with things, Eric, but how did you get involved with the Land Conservancy?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually was on the board with the Southern Oregon Multiple Listing Service for a number of years, and Bill Morse, who's been on our board for a long time at the Land Conservancy, approached me a number of years ago about joining, and I thought about it, and it lined up well for me with some of my just some of my values. I moved here to Southern Oregon in 93 for a year and then back in 99 with my wife. Now we have two daughters here. And I was attracted to this area because how beautiful it is. Mm-hmm. And the Land Conservancy works hard to, protect some of that beauty that I know we are all, here for.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
We're all here to love the beauty around us.
Yeah.
It seems that the Conservancy or the movement is growing, you think? I mean, more and more people, I think, as we get more and more pressure on our lands. Is this we talked about, is this a real estate issue, with the Land Conservancy? How do you answer that? Because real estate is important and the two can go together.
Sure. I mean, I think that certainly the Land Conservancy is not that they don't want development, because that's a natural feature to happen in our valley and obviously the United States. Mm-hmm. But I think the Land Conservancy takes the role of trying to work with landowners, private landowners that want to keep a vision for their land moving forward for generations to come. And if they choose to do so, they can work with us to set up, often through, like Craig said, through conservation easements, a way of finessing something that's going to work well for their land. If it's, as Craig mentioned, working as a ranch or working as a forest, maybe not a clear-cutting proposal, but natural thinning and that sort of thing. So it can be a win-win and can be a great thing for generations to come, obviously.
Yeah. Now, go ahead.
What's the motivation for the landowners in some of these?
Yeah, well, a lot of landowners that, buy property, let's say a rural property with maybe a forest that's been clear cut, and they work for decades to bring the forest back. And then they're getting close to retirement, or maybe even they could see the end of their lives approaching and think, boy, when I sell this property, I really don't want to have it clear cut after we're gone. So they're able, through an agreement with the land trust, to put an agreement in there that says it never will be clear cut, or will remain as a working forest, or maybe, just as Eric mentioned, maybe just have ecological thinning occur in the forest to keep it more for wildlife habitat.
When someone does that on a conservation easement, does it increase or decrease the value of the property? I thought of this because we did a TV show with these guys, and in fact, it's on the RVTV cable channels right now, replaying, or on the Ashton Comb Net. And I thought of that after we were done with that show. Does a conservation easement increase or decrease the value of a property in general? Maybe each one of us differently, but how would you answer that?
Well, generally, it does decrease the value somewhat, and it depends on what the restrictions are. If you say, we're going to continue, we want, as a private landowner, to continue to have forest, timber harvest on this property, and it's already developed. It's already got, like say you have 160 acres of woodland or forest, and it's already got one home on it, and because of Oregon land use laws, you can't build another home on the site, then the value doesn't go down a whole lot, but, if you do a timber cruise on a nice piece of property with big timber on it, and here's the timber value, and then the owners say, but we don't want to see it clear cut. We want to just have it, 5% per year, kind of a sustained yield. The value will go down a little bit. And so, frankly, just one last thing, it would limit, because of that, maybe limit the number of people who would be interested in buying that property.
Yes, I do it. But it also is interesting that the landowner, you talk about private property rights, the landowner can attach pretty much anything they want onto those easements, right? I mean, they can pretty much do what they want within reason, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. They like we talked about the other day. Basically, we put a conservation easement on a piece of land, and say it's a 160-acre piece within a certain area that, again, the landowner works with the Land Conservancy in drafting this conservation easement. You have an area that might be called a residential area, and so you say it's 3 or 4 acres. Within that 3 or 4 acre piece, you can do what you want. You could build greenhouses, you could build a barn, you could do whatever the county is going to allow you to do, when you pull permits. But again, once you get outside that residential area, then it becomes more the conservation easement, and we keep it more in the natural state. And there's once a year we come through. Part of the process of conservation easement is we have a land steward that goes out and check the land once a year and make sure it's being maintained properly, and that's an important part of the process.
Are there wildlife easements too? I mean, as part of these conservation easements that allow for wildlife to move back and forth across properties, things like that, are those available too?
Sure. I mean, I guess wildlife easement. I don't know if you call it that. But,
I don't know if the deer would pay attention.
Yeah.
What concerns me is that I see wineries, and a lot as we expand some of these places, that big fences go up and you block migration routes, you block animals from free passage, and it's obviously proven that if you have passages and corridors for animals, they will use them. So
sure.
Can you do that on some of these conservation easements too?
Absolutely. And, you mentioned fences and roads.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that can impede wildlife passage. And one of the things that we value, one of the, criteria we look at for value of a conservation property is it adjacent to another protected property? Is it adjacent to another, conserved land by the Nature Conservancy, or one of our private landowners that have a conservation easement on it, or federal lands? And if so, then that, usually is a good thing. And a lot of times you can say in these conservation easements, you can get down to the real, the details of saying, we don't want anyone, ourselves or future landowners, to build big tall fences on this property, to keep out.
So you can actually do that.
Or you can do wildlife friendly fencing.
Yeah, or wildlife friendly fencing. Well, look, in our shows, our listeners remember we had a show recently with the Jackson Soil Water Conservation District. One of their last shows was they had been removing, barriers on streams all over in Jackson, Josephine counties allow fish to move freely instead of these barriers that have been up there. And how many fish now? How they're seeing them come back
all the way to Talent and
beyond up Evans Creek.
Yeah.
And I mean, just wild places. And so that does make a difference. Now, one of the things, Joe, that the Land Conservancy wants to talk about today is a piece of property that they are in the process of buying, which is called the Rogue River Preserve. Now, this is the most amazing property. I've seen pictures of it. I've not been on the property, but if you have ever, if you've ever rafted the Rogue River from Shady Cove down to Dodge Bridge, you come through this property, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about it, Craig, because this is really a unique, one of the most unique properties, probably maybe all Jackson County like this.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous property. It's been owned by the MacArthur family since the 1940s, and Robert Rule is the grandfather of the MacArthurs that still own the property, and he was the editor of the Mail Tribune for years.
He was the editor when we came here. He was the editor back in the day. He was still here.
Yeah.
We've been here a while.
I was going to say when you know the rule, when you know the name Rule, you know that, right?
But anyway, it's an incredible property. It's 352 acres. It's got over 2 miles of stream bank on the Rogue. It's got vernal pools, oak woodlands. It's got a 140-acre floodplain forest that actually the river flows through at fairly low, flood levels, 1-year flood event and more. It had bald eagle nest. It's got an old historic home on the site. It's just an incredible property, and it really has just been lightly grazed for decades and decades. That's the only use other than the residents there that the property's ever had.
Right. Now the family put it on the market. I mean, they're not going to give it away. I don't blame them. So I think the price was $2.4 million for this property. And now, do you guys have, Eric? Did you have the money to buy it? Or
well, I didn't personally have the money to buy it.
You did. How did you go about doing this, or how are you trying to get this? Because if you don't, you have so much time to buy it, and if you don't, then the family can sell it to anybody that they wanted to. Correct?
Sure. And they might offer an extension if we're close, type of thing. But basically, we have until the end of this year, 2016. To purchase the property. And so we have a capital campaign going on right now. We found out probably in the next week or two with regards to a pretty major grant that we have currently asked for, and it should be back to us hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And if that works out, then we'll be well on our way to possibly purchasing the property.
Now, you're talking about a grant from, what is it, the Oregon
Watershed Enhancement Board.
The Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, Joe, which gets their money from the profit of the Oregon Lottery. So, all those lottery profits that, I'm a lottery retailer, that I give to the state of Oregon every year is going to help purchase this property. I can't believe it. Anyway, they're offering $1.4 million of the purchase price for this, correct?
Yes, and we're pretty sure we're getting that grant. We'll find out for sure on the 26th of this month when the board votes on it. But the staff and kind of a regional grant review team, recommended that they fund it.
Well, I read some of the comments from it, and this is like it was the top priority, Joe, in the state, was this parcel here in Rogue River, along the Rogue River, to the point they said it was the largest intact parcel of this, and this in the state, and this should be preserved. And so it looks like that $1.4 million is coming. Now you got to raise the other $1 million then, and I guess, to get there.
And we have a couple of other grant applications in the fire. One that we'll find out about from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, another from the Doris Duke Foundation. So, and we've got several smaller grants. And as Eric mentioned, a really important part of our funding component is the capital campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're hoping to raise, around $1 million through a capital campaign.
I think hopefully you'll be successful. Now, can people come out and see this place? I mean, that's one of the things that, what I like about the Land Conservancy over the year is that it's not a lock up the land and don't let anybody on it or touch it or do anything with it. And I like that. I mean, I'm so glad that you have the different approach to it. So are people going to be able to come on and see this property to see why it's such a big deal, why you guys are so excited about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're going to there'll be some limited access or public access to the property. It's not going to be open 24/7 type of thing, but at the same time, in between now and when we purchase the property, we're offering hikes to see the property. A lot of people are interested to see what it looks like. You guys are more than welcome to come out and check it out.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you can go to our website, landconserve.org, and check out when those hikes are and come join us for a hike. And then again, once we purchase the property, we will offer limited access, public access. Again, there's a wonderful chance for fishing there. It's a wonderful chance for hiking there. So it'll be fun for birders, for fishermen, and that sort of thing too.
So you guys actually see it being used that way in the future, right? Accessible for those kinds of things.
We're going to have educational opportunities, classes, all kinds of research out there, hikes, different things.
Since nobody's been on it for 100 years, it's going to be great to get out there and look at it,
What
isn't
a
it?
great asset.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a break coming up here. We're talking with Craig Harper and Eric Poole. We're talking with the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy here on the Real Estate Show this weekend. We've got a lots more to share with you. We're coming right back here on KMED. Hey, right after this. Real Estate Show rolls on KMED this weekend. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys, with you. Don't forget, you can check out any of our shows at our website at realestateshoworegon.com. They're also on YouTube /Real Estate Show Oregon. Hope you'll check those out along the way. There's lots of good shows, great TV shows. There's radio shows on there and some great topics.
TV shows look great in HD on YouTube, although Tuesday's show is still uploading. It takes about 20 hours to get those files onto YouTube, but they're pretty when they get there.
We're talking here today with the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy about the ways you can take properties and conserve them for the future. It's something we always talk about, but when it comes right down to it, a lot of people never do it, never pull that trigger. I think certainly are doing that around the valley or around us today. We've heard that the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy has over 10,000 acres right now that have been used this way, and they're on a campaign. Eric Poole, who's on the board, you're on a campaign for 20,000 acres by 2020,
the year 2020,
right?
It's called our Vision 2020 campaign.
And so tell me how you're doing with that. You're halfway there.
We're halfway there. Yeah, we're doing great. I talked when we met the other day about on the TV show. We discussed the fact that it seems like in the last year or two, there's been a real momentum of landowners more approaching the Land Conservancy and wanted to conserve and protect their land. And so it's kind of a nice situation to be in. Obviously, we're welcoming more land, certainly because we're on a goal to get to that 20,000 mark.
Yeah, well, we talk about the statistics, and it looks every year there's about 500 to 600 rural properties that change hands in Jackson County alone. That doesn't even include Josephine County. Just in Jackson County. That's 500 new families or new people living in rural properties that weren't there the year before. Now, add that up year after year. 500. You got a lot of new people living out there and have never maybe even heard of a conservation easement on those rural properties that can have lasting benefit. And Eric, I know you work with because you're involved with it, you work with a lot of clients that way.
Sure. Yeah. As a matter of fact, we've got one at 9069 Dead Indian Memorial Road that's about to come on the market. It's an 80-acre piece, and it has a conservation easement on it.
Now, what kind of a conservation easement? Tell me, what is it? What do they have on it?
So the conservation easement was drafted with the homeowner and, working with the Land Conservancy to say what she felt was important with the land. And so, for example, that one, you cannot have cattle on it. And so that particular piece has a fence around it, and the fence is perfect height so that cattle cannot get onto the property. But like elk and deer could get over the fence and get onto the property.
See, I love hearing things like that. Mm-hmm. You can have fencing for your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I love to see that. I like to see that. Okay.
Yeah. And so that conservation easement's in place. And again, she had another 40-acre piece that sold just last year to a wonderful couple. And they were drawn to the fact that there was a conservation easement on it, that the Land Conservancy was behind that. And they now are, very happy to be stewards of that land and have the property and are working with the Land Conservancy and continue to maintain it.
So you see, you can have some people buy it and would buy properties because of the conservation easement and feel good about that as well.
Part of it, I appreciate what you guys are doing too, because part of it's just an education piece that to understand kind of what's the conservation easement's about, and then what our work is wanting to do, which is ultimately continuing to maintain a beautiful area around us.
People who live in rural properties tend to love that land that they live on. It's a big reason why they live there. What an opportunity for the legacy for that property to live on with your vision and your good stewardship can remain in place even after you're gone. That's kind of a neat concept.
Absolutely. And the landowner, one of the things that she recognized, and we help landowners put the conservation easements in place that recognize the need to, you can't just ignore the land and not manage it. And so if people say, I never want to cut another tree, see another tree cut off this property, we say, you don't really want that.
Do that. Right. It's kind of extreme there. Yeah. Well, I can see that as well. Well, we'll see what happens with these properties. Now, before we get out of here, I want you to go back to the Rogue River Preserve again. So we'll finish that part of it. So it's there. You're working to raise the money for it. You're going to open it to people to see it. It sounds like it's almost like one of those two perfect things to be true. The land itself, everything. I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Pete, once you visit that property, you'll understand how extraordinary it is. I mean, it has this floodplain forest that is the second largest floodplain forest upstream, of Galice in the whole Rogue. I mean, it's a incredible kind of they call it a hardwood gallery forest, but it's the floodplain flows through this forest, and so the trees are all have their roots in the water table, and they're all really tall, and it's just like going into a jungle in the summer that's got wild grape growing up amongst a lot of different species, and it's hardly any blackberry underneath it, which makes it unique.
So with 2 miles, we've got 2 miles of river frontage on this thing, and an island, right? And one of the islands in the Rogue itself. There's, I assume, a lot of fish spawning in that area, wild fish. That it's going to be. People don't see this part of it unless you raft down the river.
Yeah, we have spring chinook, coho, fall chinook, steelhead, and there's small streams flowing through the property into the Rogue that have spawning and have rearing of coho salmon, which is a listed threatened species under the Endangered Species Act. And I was out there this fall watching the spring chinook spawn. It was just incredible. Probably 3 dozen of them.
I'm trying to think of how we can make the Conservancy make some money off this thing, to on tours or fishing trips on the property to make some money to fund other projects that might be around, because this is such a unique piece that there's got to be maybe some ways that we can do that. 'Cause people would love to guided tours, kind of things like that. Well, good luck with that. We'll look forward to hearing, Craig and Eric, how you progress with that, because it's a very important piece, and I think people would really, really appreciate it and love to go see it.
Yeah, thank you.
And good luck with that part of it.
Where's the website to find this?
We're at landconserve.org, and we are excited about the opportunity to buy this. It is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Now, that type of property where someone wants to sell it to you as a whole piece of property, I assume that of the 10,000 pieces that the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy has, under your kind of jurisdiction there, that most of those properties are easements and not properties that you've purchased. Is that a fair statement?
That's right. We only own one property, 31-acre property. So this is uncharted, new territory for us.
Well, like you're going for
someone said to us, right now you have one little pice of property, and you're trying to buy a huge one. Maybe you should start with a starter home instead of a mansion.
Yeah, that was well put. Wow, I didn't realize that this is you only own one. So they are conservation easements then.
Yeah, a lot of conservation easements, and I can touch on that briefly here. And that conservations are a big tool for landowners, for private landowners to help conserve their land. And so some things to think about, some points are that landowners continue to own the land when you get a conservation easement in place.
Okay.
They maintain their ability to sell and lease the property, and also bequeath the land with a conservation easement.
It can pass on to your heirs.
Sure, of course. And then the easement runs with the land, becomes forever part of the property, a property's title, and even if the property is sold at some point, that just runs to the new owner, basically. So it's not unlike an easement through your property for a road, for example. But once it's in place, it's in place.
But
Transfers with title.
isn't that the difference? So can't you, if you have an easement for a road on properties and the landowners agree or something like that, that easement can come off? But this does not come off once it is on, correct?
Yeah,
Right.
and it kind of runs back. We talked about this the other day, the TV show that runs back. It's an IRS scenario. You can get tax benefits for a conservation easement.
Oh, you can?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the owner, private landowner at that time, whoever that was and put it in place, can potentially get some tax benefits from that that conservation
And they
easement.
can be pretty substantial. It's you can take up to 50% of your adjusted income over a 15-year period. So it's
Wow.
it's significant.
Yeah,
donation.
It's kind of like in some ways like if you had a historic home and you wanted to put it on the National Register of Historic Places, you get tax credits, you get kinds of things that frozen your taxes and things like that. Well, it's an incentive, isn't it?
It is, and because that's in place on a national level, tax or conservation easements have become another reason they're becoming popular is that tax benefit potentially.
And you see it all the time, Eric. I mean, you're seeing it a lot as you're on the board, and
Sure.
so as a real estate broker, you're seeing more clients and teams aware of these kinds of things. And once they get the education, a lot of them are going to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes total sense to me.
Yep.
Hey, on the Real Estate Show, we're talking with the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy today. Once again, another great show, learning lots of good things about how to take care of some of the great, beautiful land that we have in Jackson County. We've got one more segment to go here on the Real Estate Show. Pete and Joe, we're coming right back to KMED right after this. The Real Estate Show rolls on KMED this last weekend of April of 2016. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys, with you here today. And thank you for making the Real Estate Show part of your weekend. We appreciate that very, very much. Hope you'll tell your friends as well. You can check out all of our shows at realestateshowOregon.com as well. Well, today here on the show, we're talking with the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy. The Rogue River Preserve, Joe, is something that doesn't come along very often.
No.
I mean, we've been around a long time, this valley, and I've never seen something like this available for holding and making sure it's available for the future generations.
And we're talking during the break, it could be a real catalyst for the Conservancy going forward. The visibility and their presence in the valley is only going to help. And I think, landowners out there, I bet you got neighbors that chime in together. One hears about it from the other and, have applicable common land issues.
That's right. Yeah. One of the neighbors is Patrick Duffy, who lives right up on the bluff above, on the opposite side of the river. And he saw an article in the Mail Tribune last spring and, called our office and said, I would like to help you, the Land Conservancy, obtain that property. So he and his wife, Carlin, are the chairs of our capital campaign.
I didn't even know that.
Heart of
That's
the
pretty
road.
cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Firepower.
Good for Patrick Duffy. Jim Belushi lives up on the Rogue River too. Up there, there's that's where Ginger Rogers lived at one time along that stretch of the Rogue River. That's really a beautiful. I mean, it really is a beautiful place. So if you're driving along there, this property is upstream from Dodge Bridge, right? That's where it is, upstream.
Yes.
2 miles of riverfront property. And again, it's really something there. So good luck with that as you go. So, Land Conservancy, we're talking about conservation easements.
What if I want to become involved? What if I want to learn more? Maybe I want to be on your board and start to help with some of these projects.
Okay.
Well, one of the ways you can do that, as Eric mentioned on our website, landconserve.org, we've got some hikes coming up, and on May 21st, it's a public kind of a opportunity to visit the Rogue River Preserve, and we have many other hikes on a lot of the properties that we hold easements on that the hikes are available for as well. And
May 21st.
We're on.
May 21st
is the
for
day.
Rogue River
Okay.
Preserve.
All right.
Yeah.
That's going to be really cool.
We're
All right.
going.
Eric, what if someone, I think that, again, we talked about all the new people who are moving out of our valley, who are living in rural properties right now, maybe hearing this or know somebody who has a rural property. They've talked about something like this of conservation easements or ways to keep their land the way it is. How can they, is there a criteria for it, or how do they get a hold of it? What's the first steps that they should do?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually have on our website, there's actually a form you can fill out that will allow you to kind of take the first steps if you would like to. Another good resource is the person sitting right next to me, Craig. He's a good resource to kind of call and we have certain criteria when we look at a piece of land that we have a formula, so to speak, that adds up to making sense or not making sense to make it a conserved piece of land and put a conservation easement on it, because there's costs that go with that. So if it's a 1 acre piece, that we're not going to, it's very costly to conserve that land. Where if it's a 200 acre piece, then it becomes interesting as well. But also there's also the soil types and views and water, and
water availability,
and trees,
things like
and
that.
That sort of thing. So I think that there's a lot of Craig's a great resource for kind of deciding or being able to make a decision to this could be a good piece of property or not.
So you're going to come out first. I'm going to call you. I mean, you're going to come out first and visit me.
Right. Our land steward director, Christy Mergenthaler, and other land steward, Karen Hussey, and I often visit and, work with the landowners, find out what their objectives are. And conservation easements aren't for everyone. I mean, there are a lot of people say to us, why do we even need conservation easements in Oregon when we have such strict land use laws? Well, one, those land use laws are only as good as the next legislature and governor. They could go away next year. And two, there's as you mentioned, people continue to move out, and there continue to be a lot of rural development.
A lot of pressure on our rural properties, that's for sure.
And so, there's things that landowners want to protect, and they can do that with conservation easements. And there's also this, as I mentioned, the other tool we use is property acquisition. And a lot of land trusts in the Northwest and all over the country actually own more property than they have in conservation easements. So, it gives the land trust more control, gives them a little bit better ability to manage the property and get people out there to see it.
And what's even good to hear from these guys is that, the Nature Conservancy is a big international group of this, and that you work with them, and they're actually maybe supporting you in the purchase of the Rogue River Preserve. That is really good to hear. I mean, I'm thrilled to hear that. That'll be wonderful.
Yeah, the Nature Conservancy is a great partner. We are the small regional land trust.
You're the local guy,
and they're the big green. But we have a lot of the same goals.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, well, that's how to do it. Landconserve.org. And that's where you start. So, Eric and Craig, thank you for that. We got a couple of minutes here. We got Eric Pools, a real estate broker, in the house with us. So we're going to go around the room here the last couple of minutes to share some listings you have, so people may want to go check them out. You get to go first, Eric.
Well, great. I started out by mentioning the 9069 Dead Indian Memorial Road. That's a 80-acre piece. It's got almost a 5,000 square feet of living home on the property, and then it's a spectacular piece of property. Again, it does have a conservation easement that'll be coming on the market in the next week or so. Be priced at $699,000.
$699. Okay, yeah. Joe.
1040 Sandoz Street in the Twin Creeks development, 2,300 square feet. It's one of the bigger homes there. Big master bedroom and bath, beautiful atrium in the back there, and it's back on the market after it was pending for a while. So snap it up while you can. It's ready to be seen and sold.
And that price is
$365,
and it's vacant, so it's easy to show if you're a real estate broker as well. I guess mine would be 180 Offord Circle out in Jacksonville. If you're looking for a family home in Jacksonville, this is 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. It's on a cul-de-sac. No traffic. It backs up against the Jacksonville the wetlands. So you have nothing but open space and a big backyard. It really is a perfect family home. That's at $450,000. It also has a main level master, which is really important in a lot of places. So, okay, Eric, you got to go next. You got another one?
908 Mary Jane in Ashland is a townhome, just over 1,900 square feet. It's priced at $349,000. It has a master on the main level as well, which is one of the big selling points of that particular townhome, because there's not a lot of those in Ashland.
Yeah, what's the price of that?
$349,000.
And that'll probably go.
Yeah.
The market is really interesting, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of activity going on. Yeah. You got anything else?
First and next month, maybe a first-time home buyer or a small family's first-time home coming up on 4th Street in West Medford. A really clean little property that will be very attractive.
Well, there's lots of people out looking, lots of activity going on. That is for sure. Well, that'll do it for our show today. It's great to hear the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy. Craig, nice to visit with you. Good luck with the Rogue River Preserve, May 21st. Landconserve.org is where you go to get the information. Eric, a broker, devoted, passionate about something else, passionate about Land Conservancy. Good for you. It's great to hear brokers doing things like this, and thank you for being here as well. That'll do it for the Real Estate Show. Have a great week, everybody. We're back with you next Saturday here on KMED. In the meantime, check out our website, realestateshowOregon.com. Have a great week, everybody, and God bless.
You've been listening to The Real Estate Show on KMED AM and FM radio, presented by John L. Scott Real Estate of Southern Oregon, along with All Cities Property Management, the Home Builders Association of Jackson County, Ditech Mortgage, the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District, and the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. For guest information or to watch a past show, visit us online at realestateshoworegon.com. Join us again next weekend for Southern Oregon's one and only Real Estate Show on KMED.